Low rank is just the tutorial of Monster Hunter Wilds, but that doesn't mean you should care any less about your item progression. There are actually still some great synergies you can make from early on between available gear pieces and some amazing skills you can stack. So I've got a bunch of loadouts ready for you guys from start all the way until you finish low rank and start jumping into high rank. So without further ado, let's jump right in it. Now, right from the get-go, I want to give a big disclaimer, and that is that you're absolutely free to follow your own path. In fact, I encourage you to test out as many loadouts and weapons as you can, especially if you maybe didn't give all of them a first try in the previous games. Since this is the game at its easiest during the low rank, this is the best time to maybe pick a new weapon off and learn its moveset. We're going to start things off with the weapons, as obviously this is what you want to prioritize, increasing your damage above everything else, but besides that also pay attention to their respective equipment skills. Some of them may be better than others and may complement your build even more. Like for example, in the case of the Hirabami tree for the Longsword, which is by the way my favorite, not only is this an amazing early on ice affinity blade, it also comes with the focus level 2, which moderately increases the gauge fill rate and reduces charge time by 10%, which means you can spam your spirit attacks way more often. So probably one of the best options, and it doesn't come too late into low rank either. But until then, let's focus on a few upgrade paths, especially for some of the more popular weapons, starting with, of course, the Longsword, since this is the one I use most. In this case, Expedition and Ore Tree immediately after starting the game is your best bet. First couple of upgrades here are pretty good, and you still have green sharpness. The moment you can immediately go ahead with the Ore Tree. This really only requires some ores you can find already within the first map. This also features the critical draw, so if you do draw attacks, you're going to get a 50% extra affinity for those attacks only. Now from here you can go with the Quematris tree, since this is going to give you access to some fire elemental damage. That is because fire elemental can be very useful against some of the immediate large monsters that follow soon. Like pretty much every other monster will have a fire weakness from here. Lalabarina, Kongala, Doshagama, and pretty much every other one up until you finish the low rank story is going to have that weakness. And guess what? You can then upgrade this a bit later down the line to an even better version that has even higher damage and still maybe a bit of affinity over there for you. From here, I went with the Hirabami tree, and the Wind Claw blade is amazing. On one side, ice is an elemental that many bosses are weak against, so it's very useful. Second of all, it has the focus skill, which lets you fill your spirit gauge a lot quicker, and that's exactly what you want on a longsword, so you can spam your spirit abilities a lot more. Besides that, it's quite inexpensive. Hirabami is an easy boss to find and defeat. It only needs 3 scale, 2 tail claws, and 1 frost sack. And for frost sacks or anything else that is rare, I recommend just capturing the enemy, as that's going to give you more than enough even in one single run. Now for the Greatsword, I immediately went with the Hope Blade number 2. This just has some pretty nice physical attack, so it's a nice one to have. Like pretty much after the first mission, you're going to replace it maybe with the Ore Tree. This is what I went with. It has critical draw, it has much higher attack damage. So critical draw, when you do your first hit upon unsheathing, it gets like 50% affinity on level 1, 75% on level 2 if you go with the upgraded version. So this is going to help a ton on draw attacks when you're performing like that, but it also comes with some very nice damage. Now, from this point on, straight to Quematris tree. Like, I'm pretty sure you can go with Espada 2 not far after you unlock the first one in the main story, so still while in chapter 2. A very good fire elemental sword with some very nice sharpness and has a rank 2 punishing draw. So this is going to deal more damage and even have a much higher amount of stun when you perform draw hits. And you kind of do that quite often with greatswords anyway. But one thing that a lot of folks ignore is much further down the tree line, and that's going to be the Spear Tuna tree. This just unlocks at some point in the story. I don't even think you need to defeat anything special. So let me know down below in the comments, because I just found it one day randomly over there. But I mean, look at these stats. 720 attack, 500 ice elemental, and it still has a bit of green sharpness. But guess what? This also has punishing draw 3, so draw attacks deal a large amount of stun damage and gain +7 attack, which is going to be quite wild, even though, like I said, sharpness is not the greatest. You need 1 Spear Tuna Fin, 5 Frozen Ice Bones, and 5 Frost Sacks. So let me show you how you can get them. Spear tuna fin is going to be the most complicated, quote unquote, as you're going to have to fish for this, and you're going to find it right here, area 17 of the Scarlet Forest. There's basically this huge water basin up in area 17 that you can go ahead and fish for. I recommend doing this during the fallow season, as that seems to be the time when this fish is most abundant, but I'm pretty sure it should spawn in all of the seasons. For the other two, you're going to need to go to the Ice Shard Cliffs, which is the 4th map that unlocks. So for the frozen ice bones, you're going to just want to collect bones across the map. That's basically it. 5 of them is going to be enough. For the frost sacks, I recommend just capturing Hirabami a couple of times. If you're lucky enough, you should get 3 per each capture. So in just 2 rounds, you're going to have enough for that. Otherwise, you're at the mercy of RNG gods if you kill it the normal way. This is going to last you quite a bit until you get some of the other better options in there. You can totally go with the new Udra tree, but really all of these will be compromises between losing sharpness, losing a lot of affinity. So I went with the Ebelrath Wing, which is basically the Rathalos tree. Relatively early, I would say, and it doesn't take too long. You just need the flame sack, so you're going to have to capture Rathalos to increase your chance to see that, but it's really good, high affinity, high flame, and you also get critical element and master's touch, so both of those are actually really interesting. One is going to slightly increase elemental damage while active, so this is going to be fire in this case. When landing critical hits, you're going to see extra damage popping up, and then there's also master's touch, grants 80% chance of no sharpness loss while active. That's going to help you quite a ton. Now, in terms of some of the other weapons, like for example the bow, whenever you're going with something, I recommend paying close attention to whatever the compatible coatings are on that specific bows, because not all of them will have access to all of them. For example, let's say you want paralysis. If you pay attention to the 3rd tab, you're going to notice that some of them actually lack it all entirely. Like, there's few options in the early stages besides maybe the bone tree, and there's like a couple more, like for example the Kongala tree, and that is basically it, that actually have paralysis as a coating you can switch to. So if you want that, you definitely have to pay attention to what you're going with. Also, pay attention to the passive skills. Focus over here can be really good as well, because you're going to have a similar gauge, but that gauge now has to deal with the coatings. You no longer apply and craft them and then apply them. You're going to generate them as you do normal damage. So focus can help here to generate those even more. Hammer also has a good range of options here too. Like for example, Paralysis tree was one of my favorite for it. You already have the first jail hammer, which is going to help a ton, but this one also comes with Stamina Thief, and the upgrade on it is going to be really good. It's going to have a 30% exhaust power, so not only can you paralyze, but you also exhaust enemies, besides the fact that it doesn't lack in sharpness and it's pretty good in terms of damage too. That's just going to carry you enough until you get back to the ore tree for the hammer. I really recommend just going with physical damage for the hammer, and ore tree with Iron Hammer 2 is just going to be one of the best. 832, no concessions, very good in terms of sharpness, and it does have a critical draw. Maybe not the best for the hammer over here, but still very good for the extra affinity when you perform draw attacks. So if you do manage to get something out of it, it can definitely help a ton. But this is just... Now, in terms of armor, you're going to notice that some of the sets have changed from the previous games, and unfortunately, yeah, the bone armor is also one of them. Now, it doesn't really get any extra damage skills. It only gets the Marathon Runner. However, it's going to be a rank 3, so it's actually quite decent for a bow build. If you start with a bow, immediately go ahead and build this. It's going to give you a level 3, which reduces that continuous stamina depletion by 50%, especially useful if you use the charged version of the normal attacks. For everybody else, just continue the normal way and upgrade every now and then whenever you find armor with higher defense. Like I said in the previous video, defense is going to be your best bet against taking damage from monsters. So that is why I liked the ingot armor early on, because it's somewhere in the midway through. It gives you like 81 defense, which is like in the middle where you want to be. Plus, it's also extremely inexpensive. Literally, a small trip to any nearby ore vein in the first map is going to give you enough of that Macalite, as well as the Dragonite ore, to craft at least a couple of the pieces. The couple of the pieces I recommend are the ones with Divine Blessing, so basically the helmet, as well as the coil. So that's going to be enough for now. Progress further. And the moment you reach the point when you can unlock the Ajarakan set, this is where things change for you significantly. It's also relatively early in the game and the boss is not too difficult. So this is going to give you one of the best skills at this point, which is a level 3 part breaker, which makes it easier to break large monster parts and also increases the damage when destroying wounds with a focus strike by 30% at the level 3. So this is not just going to make you look like a literal God of War character, but you're also going to snap enemy parts like they are nothing. Even against Raid Dao, it takes only a few hits with a Longsword, for example, to take that tail clean off. So if you want to farm more parts, not only is this set amazing, but many of these pieces can actually be used all the way until you reach high rank, as you're going to mix and match them with other better sets that you unlock later down the line. And the defense is not too bad either. Now, not too long after this, you're going to get the Hirabami fight, and that's going to be a very easy farm, giving you access to the gloves and the coil in this case for a level 2 in evade window. And level 2 evade window is actually very good at this stage for a longsword build. It only slightly increases invulnerability window, but I mean, Longsword already has a very good invulnerability window via the EI Spirit Slash and the Foresight Slash. So it's going to make it even easier for you to literally dodge incoming attacks. Even monster roars, like I said, you can dodge them, making this an amazing option around mid-low rank to get, but I pretty much used it all the way until I finished low rank. Now, an alternate set I want to cover is the Raid Dao. You probably anticipated this a lot because, yeah, it's one of your most fought bosses in the beta, but unfortunately for me, it felt quite underwhelming. Specifically, the latent power feels underwhelming on its own. It takes a long time to activate. You have to wait for like 5 minutes in a fight for this to activate, or get damaged the equivalent of 180 of your HP, which is a lot. You can use the Raid Dao set bonus, the high voltage, to kind of reduce that time and prolong its duration, but I still think it's not worth it. The biggest reason you would want to use some of the Raid Dao pieces is specifically for Constitution. The chest, the waist, and the legs is going to provide a level 3 in Constitution, reducing fixed stamina depletion by 30%. So again, benefiting something that consumes a lot of stamina, like a bow build, for example. You can even make a very cursed early version of this via the following items. So we're going to use the Bone Helmet with the Guardian the Shogama arms and waist, and then Raid Dao chest and legs. This way you're going to get a level 3 into Marathon Runner, so that continuous stamina depletion is reduced by like 50%, and we also have the 2 points from Constitution to at least mitigate some of the fixed stamina as well by about 20%. So this may be the best bow sort of setup you can follow, but I think that Insect Glaive could also benefit a little bit from it. However, you don't really have earplugs, so I'm not sure at this stage. That's why me personally, I just skipped that altogether and I just moved on to the next 3 pieces from the absolutely amazing Wrath of Lost set. In fact, this may be the best because of one particular skill on it. You have a rank 3 exploit weakness by using the head, the arms, and the legs. So I immediately recommend going ahead and replacing the previous ones with these 3. Plus you have some extra intimidator on the helmet as well to keep other enemies at bay. This is going to boost your crits so much because rank 3 makes your attacks to hit weak points gain a 15% affinity plus an extra 10% on wounds, and guess what, you're going to cause wounds all the time and then deal more damage, cause even more wounds, rinse and repeat, and basically everything becomes way easier. You can even combine this with a exploit charm later down the line. However, I don't really recall if I unlocked this in low rank but a bit later, or if it's exclusive to high rank. It's been a while since I finished the game, so just let me know down below in the comments. But if you do combine it with that exploiter's charm, you're going to get a level 4 into exploit weakness. You can of course continue to use that Jarakan chest mail for that extra 10% to the part breaker. It can still be helpful, especially now that you also have exploit weakness. And this is pretty much going to be 90% there. From this point on, we're only going to replace individual pieces as we see fit up until we just finish low rank. So the next one we're going to replace is the waist with the Guardian Ebony Odogaron, specifically because we get a 1 level into burst. So burst is actually just free damage on the first hit. With every weapon you get +5 to both physical and to elemental damage, which is actually not too shabby. But besides that, if you also do like 5 hits on the 5th one, you're going to get a larger boost, but this depends on the weapon type. So I believe that most weapons get like plus 10 to physical damage and plus 8 to elemental damage, but some of them may have a slightly different distribution. Fast weapons will make better use of this stat, like for example a bowgun will obviously extract a lot more out of it than something like a greatsword, which is way slower, but I mean at the end of the day free damage is free damage and it's not like we have many other alternatives. Now there's one special case I want to mention, and that's going to be the low rank Argveld set. Let me just tell you that the high rank one is going to be absolutely crazy, but in low rank, by the time you get it, it's going to be a bit late into the low rank story, and from this point on it doesn't take too long to reach high rank, so you're going to replace it with better gear. But still, the head, chest and arms will give you a level 3 into flare, and I kinda like this skill for non-elemental builds. Specifically, it makes it much easier to inflict wounds and also deals more damage, non-elemental damage, to the enemy. So it can actually be a good alternative to that weakness exploit, or if you're like me, you can make some concessions and have both of them. So get a couple of pieces from Argveld, get a couple from Rathalos, and then just use the waste from Odogaron and kinda have both flare and weakness exploit. So a pretty decent option, and can even like help you a little bit into like the early stages of high rank, since obviously you deal more damage even though you're kinda lacking a bit in defenses. That's just if you want an earlier alternative. Later on you can mix and match this with some of the Suwu sets, as that also has a stamina surge instead, which just makes stamina recovery speed a lot quicker. But at this stage I don't think it's worth it that much to go with anything but damage and defense. This is with just some of the weapons, the more popular options in there. If you want a full step-by-step guide for each of the weapons in the game, which is going to make a video much longer, but if there's interest for that, I can totally like just make a 30-40 minute video and explain like everything for every single type of weapon and its progression in the low rank up until you reach high rank. Maybe even do a double one and cover everything from start of the game up until high rank, but let me know down below in the comments. In the meantime, this is pretty much it. Thanks much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.